16 and a half years as an MSP, a couple years building this cool little company called Lifecycle Insights. But at the end of the day, I'm really just a guy who really enjoys helping MSPs really upskill and really figure out how to do a better job, which is why I joined Wes over at Empath and have kind of stepped into a new role. So there'll be some cool things coming around that as we continue through the end of the year.
Yeah, I hear you guys got another cool little announcement to make.
Yeah, we're gonna have some cool. We have a couple of cool announcements coming by the end of the year, so everybody should stay tuned and pay a lot of attention to Empath. There's going to be new people, new products, new stuff. It's going to be exciting.
I know what it is.
I can't tell you anything, man. You're going to ruin it.
And for those of you that don't know me, I've been helping MSPs and vendors grow for the last 20 years. I also built a little MSP consulting firm that helped over 1,000 MSPs at this point, generated over 30 million in revenue. Right now, average margins around 15% for the MSPs that I'm helping grow and scale. I got certified in a bunch of stuff because I was a nerd at heart going, hey, where's all this source code to where they found a lot of these practices so I can break it down. And then at the same time, I also have a YouTube channel where I go through all this stuff. I talk a lot. But getting right into it, since we are a little off track right now. Budget, what is it, Alex?
It's actually one of my favorite things to talk to MSP clients about, and my least favorite thing for my accountant to talk to me about. That's really what it is, right? But at the end of the day, right, we can't run a business without some kind of a roadmap. We got to know, where are we today and where are we going? Because again, we're right back to, none of us are running a nonprofit, or I hope not. None of us probably have the 501c3 designation. So we should be aiming for profit, and budget is how we know, when we can afford to hire people, when we can afford to make changes and adjustments to the business, when we can afford to buy that new tool. All of that should be planned, not just because I walked past a shiny booth at a trade show and went, I'd like to have that thing, which is unfortunately how too many of us behave when we go to these trade shows.
Exactly. And beyond that, right, it lets us know where we're going. Too often, and this is why I put forecasts on this slide, we try to think of these as forecasts, meaning our current performance, if we change nothing, will get us here by the end of next year. However, a lot of us aren't growing at the rate we want to grow at. A lot of us aren't making the money that we want to be making. A lot of us don't have the revenue mix to increase the margins, right? We talked about that with Peter. And it's those things that we need to factor into the budgets, because maybe next year we don't want to grow like we have been growing. We want to make some adjustments. We want to spend. We want to do some maturity. And we're going to go into what some of those things that you need to think about when building a budget that you can lock in and start having a expectation on your leadership teams. And that's going to be a recurring theme today, is this sets the foundation of what your leadership teams are supposed to be delivering. Now, in that, why do we budget? And I'm gonna make this discretion a little bit throughout the call, just because it helps some of us think. Between a lot of us, right, we're shareholder and CEO and owner, but I'm going to talk about if they're two different people and entities. It just makes this conversation a lot easier.
In case you're wondering, if you're married, she is a shareholder. Just saying.
Or he.
Yep. Both of you are shareholders, and there is some expectation from both sides, right? And that is fair expectation.
Oh, completely. And for a lot of MSPs, I work with quite a few, right? They have multiple partnerships. There's a 50-50 owners, and it gets too convoluted when you're owners, but you also sit in leadership seats in the company. So when you approach the conversation this way, this also gives you the freedom to where you don't have to have equal seats in the company, right? Because one of you may be the sales guy, one of you might be the technical guy, and that is perfectly okay. But when you have conversations about the growth and scale of the company, that needs to be treated as you as shareholders. Now, obviously, that could be percentages or shares, depending on LC Corp, LLC, C Corp, S Corp, excuse me. You guys get the point. But at the end of the day, why we budget is you are making your shareholders set an expectation on the amount of money you want the company to bring them per share or per percent. And this is important because this is long-term planning, long-term thinking, where everything I put into a business, I, as the shareholder, I should expect an ROI. I should expect a return on that investment, whether it was my time, treasure, or talent. And it's those expectations that I give to the CEO, the president of the company, and say, hey, here's what we expect you to get in the next 3 to 5 years.
So wait a minute. Wait a minute. Are you telling me that I shouldn't just plow all my profits back into the company? Is that what we say as MSPs that aren't making any money? Is that the excuse? Did I get that right?
I think you did get that right. And I think even going one step further, this means you actually should discuss the goals of the company in making money, right? Too often we forget that this is a for-profit business, right? We're not a 501(c). And in that we have an expectation of what it needs to make. Now, that doesn't mean I can't have a year I don't make money if I'm making strategic investments, but by that goal, like by that deadline, I need to have a certain dollar or percentage on that bottom line.
Well, I can tell you if I learned nothing from 2008, it's that sometimes you will have a year where you don't make money and it's out of your control. But being profitable going in made it possible to survive coming out, and
Completely.
that was a really important step for me was navigating 2008 and realizing how important a budget was for us.
Well, during COVID, right? I know an MSP that did everything point of sale. I mean, when all the restaurants shut down, they literally had every single one of their clients because it was point of
Not
sale and
transact.
hotels not transacting. So they
Yep.
had to spend some of that profitability because they had some contracts, luckily, that were still bringing revenue in to completely shift their vertical. So that sometimes happens as well. But once you get that appointment as a CEO or president, as hey, here's what is expected of you, it's your job then to work with the leadership team to say, hey guys, here's what we're expected to build. You're the ops expert, you're the finance expert, you're the sales expert. We need to come up with a roadmap on how to get there, right? That might take multiple years, like you're saying, Alex, right? I might need to make an investment year. And we're going to talk about this where we may not make money on year one because it's a year of maturity, where I'm going to invest that so I can do exponential growth on years 3, 4, and 5. It's all that type of conversation. So for those of you MSPs that are watching where you're like, we don't have a profit or revenue goal in 3 to 5 years, that's probably where you'll need to start in this whole process. Or you're really just going to be building a forecast. And then through that, it's up to that budget will be the compass for the leadership team to work within. And any performance outside of that budget will impact spending, net profit. That's when the CEO or president needs to go back to the shareholders and say, hey guys, COVID happened, 2008 economics happened. We found a way to where if we get a little money or make a little bit more investment, we then can use that to, go past our goals. So don't be afraid of this net loss this year, right? Cash flow is heavily involved in this. Now, one thing you may have noticed in this explanation is that when you're having these conversations of where are we going to structure our budget, is this is a group effort. Because as the president, I need buy-in from my leadership team to say, hey, that gross margin target you put on the P&L or on the budget for me to be accountable to, I can hit that, right? You
Mhm.
need that level of commitment because ultimately that's going to be what they're accountable to. And that's tough at a director or VP level.
I
Uh-oh.
love Kyle Cook's answer. The boss always says we don't have money for that. That counts as a budget, right? Probably not. That counts as being a nonprofit. That is
Yes.
that is what that counts for. But you said something that there is buy-in is required, right? This is a matter of getting sales to say I can hit that target, marketing to say I can deliver that many leads to help hit that target, um, service delivery to say we have the manpower, the bandwidth to achieve these goals. And that becomes really interesting, right? Because as we get everybody in the room, if any of you have ever managed a sales guy, he doesn't believe he can hit the mark. He will always try and sandbag you on his quota, on his numbers, her numbers, whoever that salesperson is. So there is a lot of back and forth that goes into this, and this is about setting realistic goals, not moonshot goals, and making sure that you deliver a goal that is attainable to your team, but also that you address any resource constraints that are going to keep them from hitting that goal, right? If you have one sales guy and you expect him to close 40 deals a year, it's not going to happen. It's just not realistic. So we need to make sure that once we write that budget, we can back into it with numbers that actually work.
Well, and
So
this is
Kyle, you want to talk us
also
through like how we kind of step through those individual pieces of it?
completely. And this is why we're talking about it in October and not December. So for you, those of you on this call, you're in the right mind space because you're going to go through probably 5, 6, 7 revisions over the next 3 months. And if this is your first time doing a budget, it's still going to suck. You're still going to be very much off the marks. And I'm giving you guys permission right now. It's okay to have a shitty budget the first year you build one. Just get it done. and review it. And we're going to go through all of that. So let's keep this going. But at the end of the day, I just did want to reiterate, right? This is creating that expectation, right? A lot of us have strategy, and what we're going to get through is the discipline of being able to make it. And then at the very end, if there's time, to review it. And that's going to be the huge differentiator is rather than creating all these operational maturity rocks because you heard your buddy and another MSP is doing it, you're going to build it based off of the performance of your company, not what your neighbor says to do, right? We're not keeping up with the Joneses here.
I like it. So, I like it a lot.
So there's some questions, right? We're going to start off with when you're starting this process that we need to think of. The very first question we need to figure out is how much in top line do we need to grow next year? Because all of your strategies will wrap around this central idea. The second is there enough target market to reach this? Meaning, do we have enough fish in the sea to catch to meet that revenue goal? And this is very important and gets into that cybersecurity and other packaging and products. And we're going to get to that when we get to this question. From there, how much in sales and marketing will that take to get us there? So how much money do we need to invest in order to make that revenue attainment goal? Then you'll see we don't get to operations until that fourth question, which is, do our current gross margins support that spend? Because now that we know how much revenue and sales and marketing support it's going to take to hit our revenue goals, now it's up to ops to make sure we deliver all those services to pay those people.
Yep.
So it's a little bit different of a process than you're normally seeing, which is bottom-up logic. Let's start with service and then make our way to sales. This starts with the revenue performance goals of the company and works its way down. And then last but not least, does that get us to our target of share price and net income? So you can see it kind of funnels just like your P&L would. Which means, and I kind of want to just get to this one point, which is if you are on this call and this is your first time in a budget cycle, be very, very open that you don't know how to read a P&L. I know too many operations directors and too many service managers that have no idea what a P&L looks like. And yet they'll get asked, hey, does this budget look good to you? So if you're an owner, spend a little time with them, walking them through this whole idea of, how economics work and how cash flow works. I have a video on YouTube where I literally go through this entire thing. If you don't feel like doing it, just make them watch that video. It gets them like 70% of the way there. So it does get you a good starting point, but for them to be informed, right, to the Kyle's question of, right, we don't have the budget or the money for that. That's going to be the response that you're going to have to give them if they didn't have the ability to inquisitively say, hey, if we need to add $1 million in revenue, I'm probably going to have to add $500,000 in salary.
Yep. And, I think it's an important exercise to bring your team into the P&L, however much you're willing to be to expose them to that or to let them see visibility into it. You don't have to show them the whole P&L, but it may be that you show your service manager the portion of the P&L that applies to their portion of the business. It may be that some of that gets opened up to them. It helps them understand the concept if you're willing to be vulnerable and open up and show them that, yes, you're a for-profit business and you're here to make money. But it really helps them understand how money flows through the business and what it actually does. If you're in an organization where you're willing to do that, I think it's a powerful exercise. I understand why you may not want to, and I'm not here to have that debate or that conversation. But at my MSP, we definitely did that, and it was a super powerful conversation. Maybe
I'll argue it all day long. If you want to be a growing, scaling MSP and you want to be a top performer, you need true directors and VPs, and true directors and VPs look at these numbers every single day.
And they don't care that you're making money, right? They expect you to make money. They want you to make money. They want you to be a healthy business that can support their families.
Which is a beautiful segue, because part of the pitfalls that you need to avoid when budgeting, if you look on the very bottom, no reward for victory. 110% effort deserves 110% earnings. Now, this is probably the key takeaway here is, and I know that this is a controversial topic in the MSP channel, but variable pay is something directors and VPs expect to make. Meaning, if I perform beyond my job duty expectation, I have some level of profit sharing involved in it for me, just like a sales rep. Variable pay is a thing. Now, that
you're
might be
saying
advanced.
That people on my service delivery team should have variable pay.
Oh, I would agree with that one. Even I think everyone should be variable paid, but that's me.
I like it. I like it a lot. It gets complicated, and you need to make sure that you don't screw it up in the process. So don't run out after this and say, "I heard all my team should have variable pay," and create some Chinese math, crazy calculation. Because at the end of the day, you have to figure out how to do that math in time to write paychecks. So don't screw it up. Don't
No.
do it. I heard it from Kyle and Alex, and I'm going to go implement it. But if it's something that you're interested in, Kyle has nothing but time. He would love to talk to you about it. His link was
I
on
am
the
in
last
Excel
slide.
all quarter.
Right.
I'm already
But
doing.
seriously, there's a lot of value in that, right? This is about what motivates people, understanding what motivates people, and understanding how to get 110% effort out of your team. So, if you want them to join you on the journey, you have to give them a little bit of the treasure that's involved in the end of the journey.
Well, and let's be real. If you do your budget correctly for the owners on this call, and I'm okay with you, other people on this call hearing this, 100% means I make every single dollar as a shareholder that I want to make. So that means 110% means I'm making 110% more than I expected to make. I should share that extra 10% if I do this strategically. And like you mentioned, Alex, vulnerably enough, right? Being open to
Yep.
saying this is how that works. Now, other pitfalls to avoid: overusing benchmarks. I'm going to show a lot of benchmarks today for each one of those questions. But what we need to keep in mind is benchmarks are sometimes best in class. That means people that have worked on this numbers for 3, 5, 6, 7 years, you may not be anywhere close to it, or you may not even be applicable to use this benchmark. So you really need to keep in mind that while they do help as a guiding light, right, that North Star, sometimes you just need to ignore them and do what's right for your business. So there
Or at
is
least
going to be some.
understand how hitting a benchmark on one side of the business can have a negative impact somewhere else in the business, right? These things are all string. You tug on one end and the other end moves. So,
Yeah.
as we start to look at benchmarks, it's really important that we not say, "Hey, all I care about is service salaries to gross margin and forget everything else." And then my tools cost spiral out of control or whatever. For every benchmark, there is a counter benchmark that we need to keep an eye on.
Oh, and when I show you guys customer acquisition costs average for MSPs, you're going to look at that
Exactly.
and go, don't go spend that tomorrow, because I can tell you right now, you can't afford it.
Yep.
Bottom up logic. Your forecasts show what zero change will net you, right? It's time to move the goalpost. If you only grew 12% last year, right, your forecast is going to show somewhere close to 12% next year. So, right, extend it a little bit, right? This is the good part of benchmarks. It gives you the gut feel of, hey, well, 12% is where I got and everyone else is getting 20%. Maybe I go for 14%, 13%, right? Just continuous movement forward. Like we already mentioned, crafting it alone, right? If your team is going to be accountable, then have them weigh in. That's one of the key components of good expectation setting, is that they need to know what the expectation is, and they need to know how to deliver on that expectation before you go and fire them because they can't meet that expectation. So we all talk about accountability. This is how you do it without having the guilt that you didn't do everything for your employee to possibly make them succeed and make a shit ton of money in the process. That's why it's not a gross conversation for me. Perfection. If this is year one, it's going to be okay and it's going to be bad. And you might get halfway through the year and go, this budget was completely off basis and we're nowhere close to it. Don't change it. Do not change it. Just leave it how it is and use that as learning fodder for next year's budgeting process. And then last but not least, do not set it and forget it. This thing needs to be reviewed often, and you need to discuss the why some things may not be to where you expected, and just have conversations around it. It's going to be a learning process for everybody. And just because you're not hitting targets in the first couple of years that you're doing a very mature budgeting process doesn't mean that you're going to get fired. It just means that maybe the company hasn't put that effort into making sure that these things are succeeded upon. So it's going to be a continuous review cycle. Now, let's get to these questions. Revenue attainment. Quotas.
It's always a wonderful conversation, isn't it? This is when your sales guy goes, whoa, 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 not realistic. There's no way I can hit that.
Mm-hmm. Now,
And then
for those of you,
and then you lower it, and then they go out and hit 130% of quota. That's how it typically works.
Completely. And right, if we take this from a budgeting perspective, this isn't quota, right? You'll hear us say revenue attainment a lot of times, not quota, because the idea is that the company has a revenue growth that they need to deliver upon. Now, a key differentiator with this is, and you'll see in my first example, if you want to grow 15% next year, what you're saying is I need to do 15% better than my year-to-date performance last year. Now, something where a lot of MSPs go wrong is they forget about this thing called churn. It means that you do have expected churn in your business. So if I have 5% churn in my business and I want to grow 15%, that means I need 20% revenue growth to hit my revenue attainment goals. So this is where when you, right, you're discussing with your sales team and your revenue officer, right? Hey, how are we going to generate this much revenue in a dollars perspective? So that way we can think of, hey, right, and this includes projects and professional services, one-time billables, not just that recurring revenue that you're going to start the year off with. Now, for those of you that don't know your churn, right, I did put an average anywhere between 2.5% and 5% is what we see in the channel. Now, don't go just use that. Go do a quick litmus test. Go in your P&L. Just look month over month and say, hey, does this look like 2.5%? It might be less. You might be like, hey, we're at 1%. If we're at 1% and this is your first year doing it, maybe factor in 2% just so that you can conservatively set revenue goals that will help your team if your ops team drops the ball with a bunch of new clients coming in the door. It's going to happen. Or if it's a year of maturity, you might want to churn more clients because you have a bunch of old contracts that there's no way in hell you give them a price increase without, pissing them off. So you're going to have to churn them because you're not making money on them. Be reasonable in your goals. If you're owner-led sales, you're probably not going to close 20 new logos. You're probably going to need a bunch of sales reps to come in the door that they're going to fall on their face a little bit. They're going to trip over their feet. Right? You're going to have to performance manage them for you just to figure out your process. So, right, we need to say if I was 10% growth this year and I only closed 4 contracts and I want to grow 15%, which just means I'm going to have to close 9 contracts, that might be a little difficult to do.
Yeah, and I would say look at these numbers with, through your own lens. Benchmarks are typically skewed because there is a huge chunk of MSPs that are 5 employees. And if you're a 5-employee MSP, you're not adding 15 to 20 contracts a year, right? These are skewed by the guys who are 50 million, 100 million, 300 million, who are so far out of your benchmarks and not operating in the same place as you, that they drag the numbers for the entire industry through the roof. So look at your history, start with where you are, and understand that growth to these benchmarks is a gradual thing. It's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to go from, hey, I added 2 logos last year to I'm expected to add 15 next year. This is where we get into realistic expectations.
Well,
so
and
make
that's
sure
where and that's the power of your forecast too.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't do forecasting, there's some easy tools out there like I think Cashflow Frog and QVinci out there that plug right into QuickBooks that help you figure out your forecasting. I don't know if Frank is on the call, but Frank over at Intellicom, fantastic forecast reports. But I know it takes some hours of math to put them together. But the idea is you use that benchmark with your forecast and pick somewhere kind of towards your forecast and your current performance, but still moving that along.
Stretch yourself a little bit. Like, go look at what you've done in the last year or two and stretch yourself a little, because the real magic here is just that old adage, what gets watched gets done. If you find yourself having these meetings regularly, keeping an eye on the P&L, all of a sudden, P&L is not such a big problem anymore. Profits just kind of happen. Sales just happen to close because you're paying attention to those numbers. You're checking in with the salespeople. You're making sure that they're doing their follow-ups. You start to do all the things that impact the number that you're watching and having conversations around.
Well, you're having a conversation, and what the example that popped in my head a little bit there, Alex, was, we love working on service. We love maturing our operations. We love our service delivery. And what do? We talk about it.
I don't know where that came from. Zoom on Apple has a mind of its own these days, folks. We were talking about this yesterday, but I literally had my hands folded and it gave me a thumbs down. So I don't know.
Is it going to work?
Yeah, right.
Oh, it did. We figured out how to make that work. I don't remember my train of thought. Oh, we love focusing on ops, yet we're afraid of the conversation where the true problem might be your sales targets. It might be your ability to consistently bring deals in the pipeline. So
Or
we
for a
need to
lot of
have
MSPs, it might
conversations.
be that you haven't even focused on what consistently bringing deals to the pipeline is. Sales is just a wishy-washy, like, hey, we hope it happens as we go. Maybe somebody will say something nice about us, and we'll go out and be able to close the person they introduced us to, right?
Hmm.
How many of you on here don't even have a really established sales process with the goal of bringing in a client a month? Anybody willing to own that one, right? It's okay if you're just sitting back saying, "Yep, that's me. I need to start somewhere."
Well, and how many think one a month or one a quarter is impossible? I hate to say it because I know a lot of us, I hear it all day long, feel like it's impossible.
Yep.
Um, but keeping this moving forward, and Tara, thank you very much for raising your hand. Um, and Steve, yeah, we know, man. Steve. Is revenue mix is just as important in your revenue attainment goals. Now, why I bring up revenue mix is, say we're going to grow $1 million next year. The one thing that we need to keep in mind is I don't want to sell $1 million of 10% hardware. That's not going to give our service department enough meat to pay our sales and administrative teams. So we need to have it be in place to where we understand what of that million am I going to sell? How many is going to come for recurring contracts? How many of it's going to be the service? I can't talk with my hands anymore. Right? It's going to have that level of, right. If I've been really good at pro services, but every end of the year is really tough, like really tough, because we're sitting there trying to close a bunch of deals and deferred revenue is coming down the pipeline. I need the ability to say this year we need to focus on MRR at the beginning of the year so that we don't have to try so hard at the end of the year. So
Yep.
revenue mix needs to be understood. A good exercise for this is take your current P&L, look at of a whole of 100% of your revenue last year, how much of it came from MSP. Now, if we did want to look at some benchmarks, right, best in class, again, benchmarks, we will beat this dead horse. About 48%. These are the MSPs that have the highest valuations, by the way. Product is around 21%. SaaS is around 13%. Professional services, 8%, which, by the way, I kind of disagree with that one. I'm going to make a video on it later, but that should probably be a little bit higher. And then everything else is kind of your miscellaneous. So, that 48 to 50% of your attainment should be new contracts. So what's cool about this is you can start to back into the math of, well, how many clients is that if I sold one a month, if I sold one a quarter? Because there's going to be a waterfall to those contracts, right? You might sell one in November, but you're only going to get 3 months of revenue. Hell, you may not even onboard that client completely and actually convert their revenue into the WIP.
Right.
So you do need to consider those things, and this is why this is a longer process. And when you get more mature, it becomes an even more bigger process because you got to figure out all that waterfall map. Now, let's talk about target addressable market. And this is probably the one curveball I put in this one, Alex, because there's a lot of MSPs, and if something happened the other day to one of my clients, it concerned me. And I figured this was a good point to talk about it, is when do we decide, hey, there's not enough clients out there for what we do? Hey, there's not enough clients out there that will pay the rates we want to pay. Hey, we need another product to add on to our services for our clients to buy. And the thing that came to my mind was cybersecurity, because we're all trying to do it. And right now, what I'm seeing all too often is we're not making money on it because we just bundled it in.
Yeah, that was a tough conversation you and I are having about that this morning. But there is a portion of this industry, and I'm guilty of it. So I can again beat up myself, who doesn't want to charge extra because we just want to help our customers and we feel like it's the right thing to do. The minute you start to look at your budget, the minute you start to run your business like a business, it becomes apparent that not charging extra is not the right thing to do. In fact, it puts your business at risk. It puts the employment of your employees at risk. And who do you love and want to help more, your employees or your customers? It's a pretty simple answer for me. It's probably a pretty simple answer for most of you, but it's a hard thing to wrap your head around until you really look at the budget and say, by adding this service, my cost goes up, my margin goes down, my ability to reimburse my staff and retain them and take good care of them starts to get chipped away at.
And when you think about it, and the example that happened with one of my clients, unfortunately, is they had a client asking them, hey, we need cybersecurity. And they were terrified of telling their client, hey, we don't have a cybersecurity practice, right? That's the big zeitgeist, is I have to be able to perform that. So they went to a big vendor that said, hey, we have a SOC with an EDR, and they went and bought it kind of just, a little ignorantly, even with me pounding on them, don't do it. And what happened was the one thing that they forgot to think about was, yeah, I can mark up what this SOC service is selling, right? I can do 30, 40%. But what they didn't take into account was all those tickets that the SOC was going to hand over to the help desk once they were plugged into that client. Now they're seeing an average of anywhere from 10 to 15 extra tickets per month on that client that they need to remediate. That costs time. That means those hours per clients have gone up, and that 50% markup of a $2 endpoint isn't paying the bills to work those help desk tickets. Because
So
the
now
SOC is just going to say, this is an alert.
So now I've added a product with a cost, and there's a hidden cost. That means it's even more expensive than I thought it was. Go away. And this is creating a world in which I'm actually even less profitable than if I had forecasted, than I had forecasted for. So there's tricks to forecasting, is what you're telling me.
Well, and this is where this target addressable market comes into play, is if I'm going to build out a cybersecurity practice, right, and I know I need to, then let's budget an actual amount of money to where I can develop this process and I can actually put dedicated resources on it and recognize that this is an operational cost. This isn't a service cost. If I'm developing a product because I need to be able to generate more revenue and more profit out of my current clients, right, as an account management add-on product to hit my revenue attainment goals, then I need to have that understanding of, okay, that's going to take me 4 months at $5,000 a month in order to hit that. And that's the budget that they need to develop the product on. So now I can go to vendors and say, hey, can you make this cheaper? And I can go test it, go through that product market fit, that MVP process that Agile teaches us, right? And go, hey, do I have 7 customers that want to buy it? Right? Dipple back in the day always said, if you're going to do a new product, you have to sell it 7 times to make a single dollar of ROI.
And I don't think he's wrong.
I have 7 clients.
Yeah. Yep. And so that kind of dovetails into the question that Vince is asking right now. Do you think that with proper margin, certain core cyber features should be a part of your MSP packages, i.e. EDR, MFA, email continuity, et cetera? And he's going to hate the it depends answer that comes rolling out of here. But Kyle, why don't you take this one, and then I'll pontificate on my opinions on it.
So I really want to answer this. I don't know if we have time to go too deep into it. The way I did it at my MSP, it was not a part of the services. I wanted true separation of church and state between my IT team and my security team, to the point where I actually had a separate EIN. It was a totally different legal business that offered cybersecurity to my clients, because I didn't want to confuse my client on what was cyber and what was help desk. My number one thought in that was, one, protect the business. If one breach happens, they sue the cybersecurity company, not the IT company. And right, all my MSP revenue was safe. But on the other side of the fence, my clients, right, they don't understand the difference. And I didn't want them to sit there and go, oh, let me call this team and call that team. I just wanted that ability to say, hey, there's a wall between the middle. They can call them out. They can call them out. Different invoices. And then from an account management perspective, it was really simple, because they got 2 invoices and didn't say, oh, now I'm paying $290 per user per month, which is really what they were paying.
For the smaller MSP, though, right? These are going to be the same teams that answer these problems, that answer the phone, the same teams that do everything. There's really no separation, right? So for your small MSP, look, the answer is it depends. But I think the real sane answer to it is you can roll it up. The thing is, you have to understand the service delivery cost, not just the flat cost of the product, right? A $2 agent may actually cost you $10, $15, $20 to deliver. And that's what you have to understand, is what does it cost you for that MFA product to be rolled out, right? If you're doing real MFA and you're tying a bunch of products together with full-on SSO implementations, it can be really time consuming to roll that out. And every time they add a new user, does it get easier? Does it get harder? It depends. So you really need to understand the cost of service delivery, whether you roll it in or whether you add it as an additional line item. That's a religious war for another conversation. I did line item billing at my MSP. A lot of folks are very against it. I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know that there is a right answer. I think the right answer is do what works for you. understand how you're delivering it to your customer, how that's going to be presented, and how you need to be able to defend it and explain away, that situation to your customer. Some folks are going to say, I do it so they can't tell me they don't want the EDR piece. I tell them just because there's a line item on the invoice doesn't make it optional. It's just not up for debate. Thank you very much. It's not a real tough conversation to have if you have a little bit of a backbone with your customer. But so there are core things that I think you should have in order to be in business today as an MSP. And some of those you've mentioned there, and they should definitely be on the invoice somewhere. But I don't care whether you package it or whether you create a line item for it. If you're having trouble having that conversation, grab me or grab Kyle offline, and we'll dive into it and have this conversation with you, because it's a great conversation. Maybe we need to have it as another point, but there's a million product and packaging webinars out there. Let's kind of circle back to our addressable market here.
Because here's the thing: is your target addressable market has only a certain amount of revenue that you can squeeze out of it. And if there's 80% of them that don't care about your EDR solution, I can tell you right now, out of growing and scaling a couple MSPs very fast, I can't force all the revenue down their throat. I can't say you have to buy my $290 per user per month package. I got to give them one that's $170 because I'm going after revenue, right? I'm going after growth. And there's a maturity step there to treat it like a business. Now, keeping this going forward, right? Sales and marketing is the next step that has needs, because, hey, if we're generating all this revenue, who's generating it? Right? It takes money to make money. So your growth and product or profit will hinge on bringing in enough deals at the right price. And if you haven't matured your sales and marketing, right, you may need to invest more to get it going. So, right, we talked about, hey, maybe next year's our year of maturity. I may say we may only put 2% on the bottom line because, really, I only put 2% on the bottom line because I need to invest this money.
We like that.
Right? Totally. In order to make that happen. Now, a helpful benchmark, actually, in my opinion, is normally what you'll see is 5 to 6% of revenue going to your sales team and about 1 to 2% going to your marketing team. And that's of your revenue, not of your gross margin. So this is a good way to start thinking of, well, does that get me a person? Does that get me 2 people? Right? Am I able to do that 10% growth at 9 million and almost put $1 million on the bottom line if I only have enough revenue to pay for, or enough budget to pay for one sales rep? Can they close $1 million in revenue?
And if 8% doesn't get me a whole human, who's responsible for it at that point? This is where owner-led sales comes in, right? We have to be able to do owner-led sales up to the point where, and it can't consume the owner's entire amount of time, because guess what? We're taking a sliver of that owner's salary and we're applying it to sales. How many of you who fill multiple roles put your salary in multiple places on the P&L? That's how the budget works.
That's right there. I'm so glad you said that, Alex, because that's a way to start looking at this. Is if I'm an owner and I'm the service manager, the sales rep, the executive, you do maybe need to split your salary 3 ways on the P&L, because that'll allow you to understand what you actually have. And for those of you that do deals and you're not in sales and marketing at all, you should probably go start putting in there as well, because you are doing that service.
And we're skewing those numbers significantly by taking the owner, who's the most expensive person in the building, most likely, and putting them in having them do a little account management work over here, a little bit of sales work over here that we just don't account for.
Or even this way, and this isn't part of the sales and marketing conversation, but if you're working tickets, if you're helping with projects because you're a technical founder, you should probably put yourself in COGS. Real quickly, you're going to see your margins are not as good as you thought they were. And if you want to go even a step further, put in that cost of you fully burdened as an owner. Put your distributions and put all of your living expenses in there. This is why getting out of service is so important, because you need that true cost of doing that service. And also, right, if we're going back into the target market stuff, if you don't have sales and marketing tools and you need to deploy them and you need to hire consultants to go ahead and implement them, right, put that in your budget for next year. Hey, in March, we're okay to pay for it, and we're going to see a drop in net profit. And then at the same time, will your comp plans encourage your team to work their quota? So we don't have enough time to get into comp plans today. But if you are an organization that does your comp plans based off of revenue or off of units, what you're quickly going to find out is that you are incentivizing them to bring in just pure revenue. So they may sell a bunch of boxes. And when they sell those boxes with no margin, you're not going to be able to actually then go pay their salary, because even at 40% of gross margin, there's not going to be enough. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. There's just not enough money to then funnel down to the sales and marketing team. A couple other interesting statistics I found for everyone. Revenue to sales employees, about $1.5 to $2 million per rep for best in class. Contracts per rep, anywhere between 1.5 to 1.7 per quarter, which I thought was actually pretty interesting. It was a little bit lower than I expected. Melanie saying webinar on sales compensation at structure. Yes, 100%. That's actually on our roadmap, Melanie.
We
to
have
talk
some
about
smart
sales
guys we want to bring
compliance.
in to have that conversation with us. So
Yes,
some
we
folks who are
actually have
actually
people.
doing it instead of just two talking heads in boxes. Yeah. I find that contracts per rep to be pretty interesting, right? We have a lot of talking heads running around telling us that every sales rep ought to be able to bring in 2 leads a month, or 2 deals a month. And I think this really points out where, if you're actually doing the numbers and looking at the budget, 2 deals a month might not be good deals. They might be cheap deals. They might not have high margin. And so what we're seeing is that among best in class, they're hunting for bigger whales. They're hunting for more profitable deals. They're not giving away the farm to get 2 little deals a month to be able to say, I checked my boxes, right? It requires a little bit more maturity to say, we might not close a deal this month. Kyle might not close a deal this month or next, but the following month he'll close 2 and he'll wrap up the quarter and he'll be okay. And so it takes a little bit more maturity to operate at that level and to think about it in the long term. Because we know we've budgeted enough that I can pay Kyle and he'll still eat if he doesn't close a deal in the next 15 minutes.
And we're not scrounging for that revenue either, right? We don't get into that desperate level of, oh my God, we lost a client, so I'm going to take whatever client comes in the door next, and they are only going to pay us 10% markup.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to take them, right? The second you get into desperation mode to sell clients, you start making bad deals. So this is
you wind up with clients that a year from now you're going to say, God, I wish I could get rid of him. I'm going to go fire that client, right?
Or I always hear I knew during the proposal delivery call that I should not have taken them as a client.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to service. Now, all of this cannot be done if service does not pull their weight as well. Because for those of you that don't know P&L logic, after gross, all of your service, once you sell it, has to be delivered. That's what creates that extra money that pays for your sales, your marketing, your finance team, your ops team, keeping the lights on, right? So we have to make sure that the amount of margin that your service team can protect will go ahead and pay for all these, right? Continue that revenue growth. So once we know that, and it takes the revenue growth to understand everything else, now we can work backwards to COGS. Now, you mentioned profit first, and I have about 20 YouTube videos on this topic, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, Alex, but Mike Michalowicz of Profit First, he goes, hey, rather than the current paradigm of profit, which is revenue minus expenses as profit, what if we do it the other way? Revenue subtract the profit we expect to tell us the budget we can spend, right, as our COGS or expenses. So we know what we need to make as a business, and we know how much revenue we want to make. It's real easy to say how much service or how much service dollars and cost dollars can my service managers use to deliver that. And I hope I didn't get too tongue-tied in there. But right, this is where blended gross margin anywhere between 34 and 37%. I think that's super low. Honestly, I'm not proud of that number. When I was looking through the benchmarking reports yesterday, I know a lot of MSPs that can hit 40, 41, 42 that don't participate in benchmarks. What really brought this down is product, cloud, and professional services. So I actually took out MSP gross margin based off of a lot of other variables. 45 to 50% is typically what you would see. So Vince, like you mentioned, oh, I bundle in all of this junk into my managed services agreements. If I take those agreements out, price per user, and I just have my service fee price per user, it's 50% of that.
And as we start to unpack this, you were talking about product gross margin being low. We'll address this. Professional services. Product as well is one where a lot of immature MSPs fail, and we take the eye off the ball because we're only focused on service. We'll talk about this in 3 weeks when we do the budgeting with your clients webinar. Budgeting with your clients is the most powerful thing you can do to make sure that your projects and your products are billed at the highest rate possible.
And you can see I put on the bottom on this slide, QBR compliance increases your gross margin by 17%.
Yeah.
Why? Because you're a trusted buyer. You're telling them what to buy. You're telling them what to budget.
And you
You can
told them
mark it
about
up
it ahead
however
of
you
time,
want.
right?
Yeah.
You told them about it ahead of time, because knock, knock, I need money always gets you less money than, hey, 6 months from now, we need to be ready to spend.
And Steve just said, charge more for cloud and services if your margins are too low. Completely. But it's
Yeah.
this exercise of budgeting that allows you to understand what margins you expect. So when you're building out your comp plans and you're building out your sales expectations, there is a floor. And this is where the idea of markup gets a little lost in our channel, is I should be marking up on top of margin. I shouldn't be marking up on top of cost.
Yep.
So a couple other things to help service managers kind of in this process. Service revenue per billable staff is anywhere between 190 and 230. And then also I found another one actually in my research. Revenue per pro service employee is about the same. So think about that. If I have an employee just doing professional services, they should be able to work about 200K in a year of projects. And that's project labor. That's not the product that goes into it. And then the bottom line. I know we're running a little bit against time. If you guys want to stay, you're more than welcome to. Just we want to finish this out since we had some hiccups in the beginning, so we can get it to YouTube and you'll be able to watch it later. We'll email everyone the recap when we're done. But the bottom line, just like the top line, the net income performance of your MSP needs to be decided early, and the ultimate deciding factor if your budget is complete, right? If we know the top line and we know the share price we need to go ahead and attain, I need to work my way into the middle to figure out all of the rest. And while an ending at the bottom line can feel like a result, it will be your guiding compass to your budget, and if it needs more adjustment. So this is where the process is going to go back and forth and back and forth. And if your service manager is like, hey, Kyle, I need an extra 2 people in order to hit this this revenue deliverability, then we have the ability to say, okay, if you need 2 people, how do we do it with 1 person? What efficiencies do we need in order to make that happen? Because our BDR or our marketing person, they need to eat, right? We need to be able to pay them a base. So, right, we need to have that back and forth, and someone's going to have to compromise. Everyone's going to have to compromise in this process.
This is only the last step if you got to the end of the math problem and the answer was right. Mm-hmm. Right? If you get to the end and there's 20% left over and you can afford to eat, then this is the end, right? This is just another step if we get down here and go, oh, there's only 6 points to the bottom line. We need to go back and rework the numbers and figure out where we can move things. And this is where we get back to that string example. You know, literally there are things you can pull on in the budget that make something else somewhere else in the budget move a little bit. And this is just where experience and practice and starting to understand how your numbers work and working with a professional who can help you with that, whether it's your bookkeeper, whether it's somebody in the space who really understands managed services and how managed services works. You know, this goofy little guy. You know, there are folks who can help you understand that. Josh over at Baring McKinley is pretty much single-handedly responsible for me having an understanding of what this looks like. So there are organizations, there are places where you can go to learn this. If it is super uncomfortable for you, don't fret. Everyone starts somewhere. I think that's kind of what I'd like to end on, is just that, you know, this can be uncomfortable and that's okay. But it doesn't get more comfortable until you do the exercise a dozen times, get through a whole year of budgeting, check it every month, check the numbers every week, have a meeting with your team every month and review it. And even if you're growing, if you're 8, 9, 10, 11 people, start to have your team come present the budget to you and show you what it looks like, right? And have that monthly budget review. Those will be invaluable to moving the needle in your organization and training your team.
Exactly. And that's why I put in here, we all like to talk about EBITDA and the amount of growth and money we put on the bottom line. If you haven't gone through this before, you're not going to come anywhere near best in class profitability. Don't even put it into your math problem. Don't even look at this benchmark number, right? At the end of the day, you need to do what you can in your business to bring consistent revenue and gross profit. That will be the deciding factor of when you need to grow EBITDA. Get those 2 things done, and then you are ready for this step. But from a budgeting perspective, a couple things to just throw in there. G&A, about 18 to 20% is what we're typically seeing. Revenue per employee, just total for an MSP, anywhere between 215 and 230,000. I actually tested this on quite a few MSPs that I know, and this was actually pretty accurate. I actually really liked that number.
Yeah, MSPs get floored when they hop on a call and you know, they tell us how much revenue they've got, and as a vendor, we go, "Oh, you have 13 people," and they go, "Math problem, guys." You know, or the other way around, they tell us how many people they are, and we go, "Oh, you're about $3 million, right?" And they go, "Oh, yeah, that's about right." Right? This is a math problem, and you guys should all know and understand it. There's no rocket science in here.
Mm-hmm. And then last but not least, budget attainment goal, meaning, right, how close did we get to our budget? If we want to be best in class, right, 100% is more than enough. I know it says 102 to 104 here, but if you've learned anything, I would even say 98, because I'm sure 98 is still a lot more than you grew the year before, right? This is that whole, if it's measured, it's managed. If we're
Yep.
looking at this consistently and we go into the next slide, which is right, the proper review, and we're looking at something like an actual to budget spreadsheet, and we're going, hey guys, we're 98% to our budget for hardware and revenue sales. What deals can we put across the line to make that happen? Those are conversations you've never had before, right? These are conversations that now are going to the company winning. Just like if we got down here to cost of goods sold and we went, oh no, we're 102% to our managed service cogs, meaning we probably have one or too many people. It's a very easy conversation, and it's not just cut 2%, but can we be more efficient with that 102%? So if I add 2 or 3 more clients, I don't need to hire somebody, right? Can I grow into that capacity because I hired early on for a financial forecast? So, and David, yeah, everything's going to be shared in the follow-up email after this. We always send a recap. So, and unfortunately, we didn't have time to go through here. Or maybe I'll do a YouTube video on what a good budget to actual meeting looks like for an MSP,
Yeah,
and
and
how
I
you
think
should
that would be
review that.
valuable. That would be valuable. I want to ask you one question as we're kind of running out of time here, though. If I didn't do a budget last year and I've never done this before, right? What is the thing that I can take away from this? Where can I start? What's the best next step or best first step for somebody who's really uncomfortable with this and just hasn't done any of it yet?
If you're the owner and you're asking that question, I think you need to really, the best question is, how much money do I want to make out of my MSP? And I know that sounds like a selfish question, but too often I see MSPs without goals, without direction. They're sailing in an open sea without land in the horizon. And that is the guiding force of what allows us to know how much do we need to grow. Now, don't be greedy. Don't be gross. Don't think you're going to be a $100 million MSP in 4 years. You're not going to be. But you need to have a goal. You need to set some landmark of what we need to achieve. If we're going to climb a mountain and it's 10,000 feet, right? When I get to 10,000 feet, I can climb another mountain, right? I could go for another day. But my team can't read my mind. They can't understand what good looks like. So you need to do some soul searching of what does good look like for me. If you do that correctly and you say, hey, I'm okay with being 20% growth, 18% growth, whatever the percentage is next year, everything gets reverse engineered from there.
Yep.
And it makes this process so much easier than shooting in the dark.
Yeah. So the only thing I'll add to that is don't forget to go back and go look at this year and make sure that you're not going from 2% growth to expecting 18% growth out of your company, right? If you're not there yet, like let's keep it reasonable, right? A little bit better every day is a whole hell of a lot better in a year, 2 years, 3 years. So take it in stride. Don't think that you'll go from zero to hero overnight. But if you're in a struggle today, a little bit better tomorrow and a little bit better a month after that and 2 months after that, and this budgeting starts to look better and easier.
Yep. And then year 2, it literally is, we all sit down, we go, time to build the budget. We know how to do this. Let's knock it out. And your growth will catapult from there. I guarantee it.
Thanks for hanging out, staying a few minutes extra, everybody. This was, I think this was good content. We got some good feedback.
Yep. Everyone, we appreciate it. Let us know any things you'd like us to tweak, anything else that you would like us to cover. We're trying to build out the roadmap for our content for honestly, the next 3-4 months. We know we will be handling sales quota quite a bit. We might have to do 2 or 3 calls on that one. And at the end of the day, hit us up. If you guys need help, you know how to get a hold of us. Message us on LinkedIn, or send us emails. We're here to help, guys. This is what we do now, and what we're going to be doing for quite a while.
And in a couple of weeks, we'll be back with how to deliver a budget for your customer. So come join us for that one. It'll be fun.
All right, everyone. Thank you.